All
Okay.
right,
We
mine
are.
disconnected. Sound not connected. Shit.
We can hear you.
Oh, but
Fine.
that's my voice, but the backup
Yep.
says not
All right.
configured. Okay, hold on.
That's
And
okay.
it
We'll give
does
our
that.
audience, we're live streaming now, but we'll give a few minutes to
Okay.
our audience so they can tune in and
Adrian,
get
right?
comfortable. And
Is Ken in the house? Isn't you're using his computer, right?
Yeah.
He's not. Is he around?
Oh, see, it said not connected. I mean, it went off. So at least he taught me how to get connected again.
so
And
for
I
those
just
who are
heard
just joining us, we'll give everybody a few minutes. I'm sure we'll have some latecomers. We're going to just do a little sound adjusting.
Okay.
Take your time, Adrian. No hurry. We still
Okay,
have plenty of time.
this should work now, everybody.
It's a little sneak preview of what's to come.
There we go.
Yep.
There we go. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, who we have so far. I'm so excited for this today. All right. All right. And we have some sunshine outside. How is it over there on the West Coast, Jane?
It is hot.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm prepared when I get overheated, not crowded.
Well, this will be good. So thank you, everyone who's already starting to tune in for our live webcast, Q&A, performance discussion on wood flutes from Boston to Belarus to Brazil with our wonderful Powell artists. I'll introduce them momentarily. But I'm so glad that we can do this today with our wonderful artists.
We are
We'll
too.
give everybody a couple
really
of minutes.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you so much. I'm only too happy to talk about this baby of mine here.
Yeah, it sometimes gets a little bit personal. Like I've even said, pardon me, but I love to stroke.
Yeah,
I mean,
right. That could, right.
there's so
Well,
much to love.
yeah, really. It's
Well, and I'll be interested to, you know, as the weather has been changing, we can talk about this a little bit, but, you know, if I thought you were going to say, you know, it can be a little bit temperamental. So if, you know, you're experiencing that in your instruments and, you know, as it's getting
I
hotter,
haven't.
but
If anything is temperamental, it seems to be me. You know, and I've always, you know, I've always blamed it on me.
Yeah, really. We come from a background where if something goes wrong, it's your own fault. Forget
Yeah.
it. It's not the flute. I mean, it's taken me months to take my flute in because I kept blaming myself. Oops, didn't practice that enough. Better, you know. And then it turns out, Jane, how are you playing this thing? I mean, so it's
Right. Exactly.
Well, I'll get started with a little bit of our introduction, and I'm sure we'll get some more viewers as they realize the live stream has started. But to everyone who's tuning in so far, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kristyn Moore. I'm the direct sales specialist at Vern Q. Powell Flutes. Currently live streaming from my home in Medford as we, you know, still try to keep our distance and stay safe as we come down, hopefully, eventually, from everything with COVID. And this webcast today is part of a series through our Buffet Crampon family, our hashtag Together at Home webcasts, now every Thursday at 2 p.m. And if you were able to catch last week's, it was a wonderful little introduction to today's webcast, all on wood flutes from Boston to Belarus to Brazil. Last week we learned about grenadilla oboes and clarinets with my colleague Matt Vance. Lori Orr and artist Brenda there. And so today we'll get to dive into not just the instruments themselves, but these two wonderful genres that are, I think, so unique and so lively and have so much to offer. So with that, I'll introduce our two special guests today. down, let's see, for me at least, on the bottom of the screen here, we have Adrianne Greenbaum, Powell artist and professor of flute at Mount Holyoke in Western Massachusetts. So we are so thrilled to have this klezmer extraordinaire with us. Hi, Adrianne.
Thank you.
On
Thrilled.
the side of the screen here, she's out on the West Coast, so a few hours behind us, but a Choro musician extraordinaire. I've been listening to your recent albums recently, and I've just been dancing in my seat. So please welcome Powell artist and flute teacher at the San Domenico School out in the Berkeley area, Jane Lenoir.
Hi. Thank you.
Hi. So thank you both so much for joining us today. And as I kind of mentioned, the title of our webcast is Wood Flutes from Boston to Belarus to Brazil. And, we kind of called it that because you are both wood flute players, but kind of have your own unique paths through your careers, not just, classical chamber and orchestral music, but klezmer in the case of Adrianne and Choro for you, Jane. So, for those of us who are not maybe familiar with those types of music, would you both be willing to kind of explain the roots and where these styles come from?
Sure.
Awesome.
You want to go first, Jane?
Sure. I play the style of music called Brazilian Choro. And Choro music is a style of music that emerged in Brazil in the late 19th century, where many European immigrants were moving to Brazil. The land was cheap, and they were coming from cultures that had many problems. And we're talking, of course, Portugal, Spain, Russia, Germany, and also Japan. So many people were swarming into Brazil in search of, beautiful climate, freedom, inexpensive land. And they brought with them their music, their popular music, their instruments, pianos, and in the case of Portugal, mandolins, Spain, guitars, all of these instruments, piano. And they brought with them the instruments and popular music melodies, the polka, waltz, classical music, big time, and moved to a country where its peak, the slave population, the Afro-Brazilian population of Brazil at its peak was 70%. So the influence of the Afro-Brazilians was huge, and mainly with their own music and their religion and the percussion. And so these two styles sort of merged over a period of time, and around, I think it was around between 1850 and 1880. The flutist who taught at the Rio Conservatory, Calado, formed the first Choro ensemble. So the first Choro ensemble was formed by a flutist who played a wood flute of the time. I think it had 5 keys on it. And the other instruments were a cavaquinho, a very small guitar, looks kind of like a ukulele, and a guitar. So this style emerged, and it was an immense instrumental style, emphasizing form, A, B, B, A, B, B, A, C, C, A, which is sort of classical form, and melodies which were in many ways very complicated and technically challenging, because Calado was a great flutist. And if you think about the late 19th century Anderson etudes, Opus 15, we all played those. You look at some of those Choro pieces and you go, this stuff might have been written by a flute player. Well, yes, it was. A lot of the Choros, Pixinguinha later on. So anyway, this style emerged, and now it's sort of gone through a number of different revivals. We're sort of going through one now. There was one in the 20s, in the 50s, 60s, and in the United States, of course, when we perform this music, we don't play it the same way the Brazilians do, although we're trying very hard to emulate them. But in the United States now, we have a number of people, Anat Cohen, who she's been streaming from live at Lincoln Center almost every month now with her Choro ensemble. Anat's a great clarinetist, from Israel who just fell in love with Choro. So the audience is kind of building for various reasons, and my group, the Berkeley Choro Ensemble, I feel like we've made a contribution in this regard too, and I can talk about that later. But there seems to be a lot of interest in certain parts of the country where the musicians are accessible, and it's not everywhere, but there are certain locations which the San Francisco Bay Area, for various reasons, has a pretty active Choro scene.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jane. I'm looking forward to, hearing more about it. And for those of you who are just tuning in now, we will have some special live performances from Jane and Adrianne later. And if you have any questions for them along the way, please feel free, ask a question in the comments and we'll field it and, really bring out their expertise. So Adrianne, I'd love to hear a little bit, for those of us who are not familiar so much with klezmer music, could you tell us a little bit about it?
Of course. Klezmer is like Choro and Brazilian music overall. It's been around a very long time. Our instrumental klezmer history goes back to the 16th century. And we know about this because there were folks who worked as klezmers. So the name klezmer music really didn't come by so soon during that time. You were a klezmer playing music of your time and of your people. And mostly we talk about, in the current world, we're focusing on music from Eastern Europe. And that has a pretty broad area to cover. And then, of course, as Jane said about Choro, we're travelers and stealers. We traveled to Germany, and oh, that's nice. And the Germans would catch on, and so there was that exchange. And through our research, we get to know where most of it comes from. A lot of it is from older portions called Galicia, actually where my family, both sides, was born, and Belarus, which was White Russia, another part of my family. And the instrumental tunes can be so varied because they were functional. Sometimes you would hear a tune that, as most people think, klezmer is just wild dance music, and a lot of it, of course, is, and it's graceful dance music, but it's also listening music. A wonderful part of klezmer presentations is during an old-time wedding. If you can reach back in your history, it wasn't one day, one evening. A wedding lasted 7 days, and they really knew how to celebrate.
That's a party.
Wow.
And part of the history is there's a little Dybbuk, a devil, that wants to come in to your party and say, now remember, everybody, life isn't always so wonderful. Let's bring it down and remember the sad times. And people would be still, clinking glasses and making too much noise. And the klezmer, that would be the time to come out into the middle of the gathering and quiet everyone down with a very special solo, probably not even accompanied, and that quieted people down, because if not, the Dybbuk would come, and nobody wants that. We've had a history of playing at funerals. We play for braiding of the hair, different aspects of the life cycle. There's a hair cutting we should have offered that to you, Kristyn.
Yeah.
Usually done when a male child reaches 3 years old. He gets his first haircut. That's a celebration. Um, so it is celebration music, but there's a lot that's not dance music, and the flute's presence, frankly, is based on both extremes. We started out just happy ducks, being involved with, let's say, one other person, be a hammered dulcimer or a bass player or a violin. Then maybe sometimes the family would be wealthy enough, ooh, let's go for three.
Mm.
And throughout history, more and more were added depending on wealth and also the popularity of an instrument. So pretty much once the clarinet and brass came in more, you could kind of say goodbye to us, especially here in the States, where people were starting to record and said, forget it, we can't hear the flutes unless you bring in six more. And there, according to our photos, there could be 3 or 4 flutes in one band. A very, very important colleague and purveyor of klezmer knowledge and playing, Henry Sapoznik, corrected me from the audience. He said, no, Adrianne, there weren't many flutes in the band. That was just for the photo op.
Whoa.
So, you know, we are making history as we go. And when I first began, Henry said to me, Adrianne, clearly you should take this as far as you can go. Nobody else was doing it. I arrived to learn klezmer flute. There was my first teacher was a fabulous trumpet player, Frank London of the Klezmatics. That was fine. Second year, I really kind of wanted to learn from a flute. So they had a flute teacher who, maybe I'll demonstrate later, but played the flute not so well. Be kind. It wasn't good at all. And then he kept asking me for hints. I said, okay, next year I'm not doing this. And you know, yeah, I stayed in the class out of respect. So I've taken the klezmer flute as far as anybody has, certainly in this century. Yeah, because we only have
Wonderful.
4 solo to
Yeah.
compare with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I wonder if so Adrianne, you told us a little bit how you got into it, but maybe we can bounce back to you, Jane, how you got into this style of music. And then once you tell us that, would you mind playing a little bit if you're up for it?
Sure. I'll be happy to do that. This is kind of a long story, so I'm going to try to give you the abbreviated version, but you know, so first of all, I should explain that I was trained in a very intense background in classical flute, and that was all that was available when I was a student. When I came from a musical family. My father was a low brass player who had been a band director in the Navy during the war, and then he taught at the Navy School of Music. He was conservatory trained at Boston University. My mother was a pianist who had a very, very excellent education. So me and my sister, Annie, who played the clarinet, we were given a really great education. I have to say my parents, I got about as good as it gets, you know. And so we were living in Tampa, Florida. My father was teaching school and playing in the orchestras. There were several of them that he played in. Tampa was called the Tampa Philharmonic, St. Petersburg Philharmonic. But I started flute at 11, and I didn't really think I was doing anything special, you know, but all of a sudden, you know, people were telling me I was really good, and I thought, I am? You know, I was just doing what I was told to do. So I was sent off to these camps, Brevard Music Center, and then I went to the National Music Camp in Interlochen, Michigan. And my first summer there, I mean, I really wasn't too aware, you know, I wasn't like carrying this huge ego around or anything. I was too young, but right away I won a concerto competition, and I got first chair in the high school orchestra, which was kind of an accident in a way because I had very little orchestral experience. But the bottom line was this: that was the year that that the Interlochen Arts Academy was beginning. And Joseph Maddie, who was this incredible visionary man who started the camp. My mother went to National Music Camp, by the way, on piano.
Wow.
But Joseph Maddie was starting a school called Interlochen Arts Academy, and they were actively recruiting talented young people to go to the school. So I was from Tampa, Florida. There was no youth orchestra there. There was very little, you know, and I was playing in the junior high school band, but I got the scholarship, as well did many other very talented people like myself, and many of them came from families like mine. Their fathers were public school music teachers, their mothers played, you know, instruments, and so I had this unbelievable education where we had one orchestra concert a week and different repertoire with these amazing conductors. And Thora Johnson was there while I was there. He was an incredible, you know, a highly professional, wonderful musician. We were playing Prokofiev symphonies, everything, Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, Shostakovich. I mean, it was sort of unbelievable when I think about it. And that school is still there, and they don't have the same kind of program. But the other aspect of it was we had to re-audition every week. We had what's called challenges. That was kind of a nightmare. But for me, I developed a lot of great reading ability and technique at an early age. That was the bottom line, as did most of the other people there. And so by the time then I went to Oberlin, straight classical music. They really didn't have a jazz program. So, you know, I went through more of the same thing. And of course, you know, great teachers there. I had Bob Willoughby, as did Adrianne. But by the time I got out, I was kind of burned out with, you know, I love classical music, believe me. I just love it, and I love playing in orchestras, and in fact, I do play in orchestras now, some of them, but not full time. But I was just kind of looking around. I thought, there's got to be something else. And I was the kind of person that was just like, I was interested in really creative people. So at the time when I graduated, there was this new music scene. I was playing in every single new music group and all this. And by the time I got to my late 20s or so, I started getting interested in jazz. I was hearing, you know, I was in this community of very creative people. So I started getting interested in that. And so I spent a lot of time hanging out in clubs and, you know, taking classes and what have you. But the bottom line is eventually I went through several stages, jazz, bebop, Latin music, which I love and have played in a band for quite a while. And then along came Choro. And I was introduced to Choro through my sister, who, and this is a real argument for going to those conventions. She had gone to a clarinet convention. She played a buffet clarinet, by the way. And my sister was a character. She passed away very sadly 3 years ago. She was a total character. Adrianne remembers her. But she was really an amazing musician and very insightful. I trusted her opinion. If she says, do this, this is great. She went to a clarinet convention and she said, Jane, she said it was a long day. You know, I went to hear her friend, John Manassi, a great clarinetist. He played, the hall was packed. John finished, most of the people left. And she said, I'd been out partying. I sort of had a hangover, so I was just sitting in my chair. And on walked the next act, which was Paulo Sergio Santos and his son, Kyle Marcio, who was 16 years old at the time. They came on stage very, you know, unobtrusively, picks up his clarinet, and he played two choros. She said it was the most breathtaking thing she'd heard. It was spectacular. They played for 5 minutes. She said the standing ovation went on for 20 minutes. I mean, she might have been exaggerating, but she was so powerful. She called me on her cell phone from the floor. She said, you're not going to believe this. I heard this great music. We have to play it. And it's all about clarinets and flutes. And it's just, so she was trying to describe it to me. So she started, she befriended Paulo Sergio, who is now a very close friend. And he started sending her recordings and charts, and and she sent them to me, and she was living in Colorado and I lived here. Lucky me, I was in a place where was already a Brazilian music scene. I didn't even know that we had a choro scene, but it was the beginnings. I would say sort of the beginnings of a scene that has really grown. And I was able to start, there was these informal jam sessions, and I immediately took up this. I asked people, what do I do? How do I learn to play choro? And they all handed me this instrument. You have to learn how to play the pandero, Jane. I spent more time on pandero than flute at first. The core, the rhythm is and the style. I could hit those notes, man, not a problem. But it was the style of the music was all grounded in the rhythm and the groove. And then another thing came along, which was California Brazil camp. Little did I know, I would say to people, how do I learn how to play the music? And a lot of people, well, you have to go to Brazil. I said, well, let's see, that's going to cost me $1,000 airfare, and who knows how much for the hotel. And they said, but wait, you can go to Brazil camp, which is 2 hours away, 2 weeks out of the year, the last 2 weeks of August. There's this amazing camp in Sonoma County. And the director, Dennis Broughton, wonderful guy, had started this camp 10 years earlier. He loved Brazilian music. He was a percussionist. He knew everybody. He kept going to Brazil. Well, guess what? He brought Paulo Sergio Santos to the United States to teach there, Milton Giolanda. Brazilians know who I'm talking about. These guys were the best, So I think that's my phone. Hold on. No, it's my son calling me. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries.
Let's get to playing.
Okay. Anyway, but all I'm saying is
Adrianne wants to hear you play anyway.
Yeah.
okay. All of a sudden, my screen disappeared. But so I have prepared a one piece to play for you that I recorded with Vanessa. Do you want me to go first, or do you want Adrianne?
You have your flute in your hands. Let's do it. We've heard our choro. I'm gonna make your screen a little bigger for everybody.
Sorry about that. I have to get back here to my setup. There we go. Okay, so I recorded with this amazing guitarist, Alessandro Panezzi, who also taught at Brazil camp about 3 years ago. And this is from the piece that he wrote. It's all his compositions. I wanted to make a CD of a living Brazilian composer. And I just decided to play his music. I loved it. He was our teacher at Brazil camp. And so I'm going to go ahead and play it. It's called Sempre que Posso, and it means everything's possible. Okay, so let's hope this works. I hope you can hear that okay. That's it. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I love it. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Jane.
And while we're standing here, let me just, if you can see this, there he is, Alessandro Panizzi, one of the great Brazilian guitarists. I feel so honored that I was able to record with him and play with him.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you, Jane. And for those of you who are listening today, if you want to hear more of Jane's music, she does have some wonderful recordings, and they're even on Spotify. You can purchase them, and you can catch her hopefully when live music can resume. I know you perform a lot in the Berkeley area and also do some.
Right. The Berkeley Choro Ensemble is the group that I started in 2010, which hopefully I'll get a chance to just say a few words about that group. But
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Jane. All right, I'm going to switch our view now so we can kind of see everybody a little bit again. Hi, Adrianne.
Hi.
We heard a little bit how Jane got into Choro, and a little bit of a preview how you really started becoming a klezmer musician. If you feel like you want to elaborate more or dive right into performing, I'll leave it up to you.
Well, what I will do is not bring you all the way back to my roots of playing at all. But when this is my klezmer introduction. I was teaching an adult student who would say every once in a while in her lessons, I started a klezmer band. Oh, that's nice. And she was always, pretty excited, and it was taking up a lot of time away from Mozart. He really was into, and so I kept saying, very nice. And then I had a relative who died and left me. It sounds like a paltry sum, $3,000 in her will. I don't mind saying that she left $100,000 to a Jewish organization. Oh, huh, okay, that's nice. So she left $3,000. I used most of that to attend a bonding kind of camp for Yiddish. And along with that was dancing and listening to a band. And I brought my daughter, who was then 7 years old. So we had a grand time. And first night, the band started playing. And guess who was leading the band? My student. She said, I've been trying to tell you. Okay, I get it. I really love this music. So she let me, she said, you want to play some tonight? I said, well, sure. I mean, just like Jane, I mean, I could sight read anything. What I didn't know, thanks to my naivete, I played just brilliantly because I was just reading the notes on the page. That's fine. I, knocked my own socks off. So I picked the hardest thing that was in the book. And then I said to Amy, where can I learn more about this? She said, Klez Camp. Oh, sure.
There you go.
Very similar, yeah.
The same reaction we get sometimes with, I'm going to be playing at the National Flute Association convention.
Right.
Right. There's a convention of flutes. Mm-hmm.
Of course.
So, okay, I'm going. So I arrived and I apologized. I said, first of all, so wonderful to meet you, Henry, who's the director, the guy who called me out from the audience. And I said, I apologize. I play the flute. He said, I'm sorry. I don't understand. Why are you apologizing? I said, well, there's no flute teacher here, and I don't play the clarinet and I don't play the violin. So is it okay? He said, oh, absolutely. Let me show you the photos with more than one flute in it.
Right.
Yeah. So by the end of that session, I've already told you a little bit about that. There was nobody qualified on the flute, but I really got into it. And everybody was saying, you've got to start playing the wood flute. And so I had an old Rittershausen at home. So I started with that. That was a pawn shop $40 thing. And that taught me a lot about the response of a wood flute, and it was pretty decent, although it leaked like crazy. But I learned the style from all of my colleagues. The violinist helped me the most. Clarinetist, a real big deal one, David Krakauer. I went to his class, and he taught me some secrets. And off I went, and I put out a recording a year later. So this was 25 years ago. And I started about 5 years later than that. I started my own ensemble, which was very traditional of the time. Myself, violin, cymbalum, which is a hammered dulcimer, and a bass. And that way I could play nicely without having to fight the louder instruments, which there's a lot to be said for why the recording industry doesn't have a lot of us on it, because we just didn't carry, I guess they didn't want to give us a separate mic or something, I don't know, but that's part of the reason why it fell out of fashion. But the flutists of the time, you should all know out there, they were quite accomplished, and you could tell that they were classically trained. There's plenty of history about the musicians being classically trained and very well immersed. And you're going to hear some snippets in my tunes that I'll play that you in order to be a kind of player that the music demands, of course you have to have good solid background, and a good instrument to play on. And what I'm going to do is give you a quick sort of breeze through of dance music, and then I'm going to play a piece that I composed for my daughter's wedding just last year, as she walked down the aisle. And then I will end with, I'll tell the funny story now, a quick serba. And sometimes it's good to know, to be able to play something moderately fast and then zip through, because your musicians might even rush. But I like to show off a bit with this last tune. And one time I was performing in Iowa, and I was with a Russian guitarist and his mother on cello. His mother didn't speak. She played very well, but she didn't speak English, so it was always translated. And I said, so at the end of my first time through, we're all going to stop. We're going to stop. And I'm going to set a new tempo. And she looked up at me and she goes, da. But with the face of, well, sure, I don't know what you're talking about, but da. So it means yes. And over I said, we're going to stop. Da. So I went back to the guitarist. I said, could you kind of make sure your mom understands? And she goes, da. Well, at the concert, she didn't. And Jane and I haven't said this yet, but it is so much fun to just sort of play on the spot. Things will happen. And in classical music, there's less room for it. If you forget a measure, oh boy, you better know how to fill in somehow. But with Klezmer and Choro and whatever, these freer styles, so do something else until you catch on. So I'm going to begin with a quick Frelix. Hopefully my Bluetooth is still connected. It says not connected. Hold on. There we go.
All right. It's always, it's such a learning curve that we've all had to go through, you know, with new technology
Yeah.
as we, you know, try to combat
Right.
quarantine.
So here we go. Freiluch's wedding processional for my daughter, which I will quickly find in here. Won't take two seconds. And then ending with that funny Serba.
Right.
And now we walk my darling daughter down. Really? Funniest piece ever played in public. That's it.
All right. So there we go. Thank you. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Adrianne.
Welcome.
And what your daughter, what a lucky lady to have such a beautiful processional. Oh my gosh.
I'll tell you, she was also wise. I said, please, could I play it? And she said, Mom, you'll never make it. You know, you'll be crying. And I said, oh, come on, I can. It's a good thing.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Thank you. And you know, such a range of emotions, and I really loved that selection. So, you know, we've heard a little bit about your genres. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just want to say that it goes to the joy of playing our flutes that we can and do what we do. I can't tell you how many times, and many are annoying, you know, people come up and say to us, oh, I love your tone. What kind of flute do you play?
Yeah, all the time.
Wait a minute. I'm happy to tell you, but we make those, you know, and then as a bassoonist friend of mine said, you know, he puts his instrument down. He said, you like the way it sounds now? But since
It's just a part of it. Yep.
playing this particular thing, this whole thing, I go, thank you. I'm in love with it too. You know, look what it can do. I mean, we both used colors, played very soft. I arrived actually with, you know, back in 2000. Jane and I had Jane, thanks to Jane, I bought my flute. I came into orchestra. I was principal flute of a very fine orchestra for a long time. And I walked in with the flute, took it out, and the conductor said, oh, you're not. I said, what? I'm not what? He said, you're not going to play that here. I said, yeah, give me a try. So I started to play, and you know how nobody's allowed, really, you're not supposed to turn around.
Right. Right.
In orchestra.
Right.
Oh, they all turned around and went, oh my God. What is she playing? Oh, oboes were thrilled. Clarinet
Yeah.
was thrilled. Everybody was thrilled. It's a new color. It's
Yep.
so
Yep. Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, yeah, I just want to give you a little feedback. You're getting a lot of love, both of you, on the chat, the Facebook chat from our audience today. So brava again, bravi. Thank you for those performances. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to chat a little bit, now about your flutes and, what made you, gravitate towards these Powell handmade custom Grenadilla wood flutes. You know, and what qualities do you find in the wood that you didn't feel like you had in metal instruments?
okay. So Jane can go first,
Okay,
but I want to make sure that I get in there
absolutely.
after.
We have time. We don't have to limit it to a strict hour.
Okay.
Yeah, when, as Adrianne said, we saw each other in Columbus, Ohio, at another flute convention, NFA flute convention, and I had this idea. Part of the reason I went, I hadn't been to any of these conventions in years. I thought, I really should buy a wood flute. Well, I didn't know that Powell was making these flutes. I had no idea. I thought, I'm going to buckle down and buy one of those Baroque flutes. I'm going to learn how to play it. And by the way, I since have purchased a couple of Baroque flutes and studied them and played them. But at that time, I really didn't know, and I was sort of like, do I have what it takes to play a Baroque flute? So I went to this recital and a Baroque music, and everybody was playing a Baroque flute, but Ransom Wilson stood up and was playing something I'd never seen. It was this flute, and it sounded great, and I thought, that sounds really good. Well, it was a modern flute, of course, much easier to project, but I thought it was such a cool idea. I literally ran out of that convention, headed straight over for the concessions, and I screamed, "Where's Powell flute? Let me at him!" And I went and I grabbed this flute, and ever since, I took it to Adrianne and I said, "What do you think of this flute?" Hoping that she would say, "Don't waste your money," because it was a lot of money. And I played it for about, I swear to God, it was like 3 minutes, and she said, "It's fabulous, buy it." Well, that was my first experience, and I have to say it was very similar to Adrianne's. I played principal flute in a couple of orchestras here, and I played it in the orchestra, not just Beethoven and Mozart, but I was playing the whole range of the repertoire, and most people loved it, especially the winds. They said, "Oh, because it was so easy to blend with." But I will tell you, because I played Latin flute. Now these world music styles, the flute is always up there in the third octave and in the fourth in Afro-Cuban music. And why? Because they were playing outside with 4 or 5 percussionists who could hear us. We had to be able to play in the high range. In Brazil, the whole experience of playing choro, a lot of it is done in what we call the roda de choro. Outside, the wind is blowing, we got percussions, guitars, cavaquinhos. That means like nobody's going to hear you if you're in a group that large, if you don't go up to the third octave. So I love all of the notes on this flute. I love the low range, the middle. They're warm. Plus, I feel like it reflects who I really am. I feel like it's going back. It's this love affair, like, yes, you're okay. You really are okay. But I like the third and the fourth octave as well, because there's something about the quality when we have to go up there. It's warm, and it's not as sort of, we know what silver flutes are like, and of course they're great, but it's a quality that I feel more comfortable with, and especially playing with all those plucked instruments, mandolin, guitar. My group, the Berkeley Choro Ensemble, is a quartet: flute, clarinet, 7-string Brazilian guitar, and this percussion instrument, which I showed before, called the pandero, which I have studied and don't play very well, I have to be honest. But at any rate, in our group, we do play dynamics, and I can play in the low range and the high range. But overall, I just feel like this flute, it just has a lot of warmth, and almost everybody who hears me play it, they love it. I mean, the audience are coming up to me all the time. Now, when I play the flute, I introduce it before I perform. I know you're going to ask this question, and I'm playing a whole wood flute made, I talk about it a little bit. So at any rate, it's just been wonderful. And one more thing quickly, I was in Brazil in February for a month, thank God, before the horror descended on our whole planet, and especially now in Brazil, which is a nightmare. But this was my 7th trip, I believe. I had been there a lot. Now, all of a sudden, all the Brazilian flute players are playing with wood head joints. Now, a lot of Brazilians don't have the finances we have in this country. It's much more difficult. but I thought to myself, they agreed that, you know, they made the same decision that it's a very comfortable sound to play with a wood when you're in that kind of environment. And of course now there is a incredible head joint maker right outside of Sao Paulo, Abner Medina. They're playing his head joints, but it was sort of a confirmation of my whole thinking along those lines. So anyway, I love it, and thank you, Paul.
Yes, and you know, cheers to our wonderful flute makers. I know a few of them are watching right now. They do wonderful work. So, Adrianne, would you love to tell us about your flute?
Yeah, so carrying right on from Jane, I said fabulous, fabulous, and I had already started playing klezmer, and on my Rittershausen, which was a struggle. You know, I wanted to join in on in the community, and I was already told, play a wood flute, come on. And so when Jane showed me this, I went scampering down right away. I didn't even check my checkbook, and picked something right away. And you know, I was totally in love. And you know, I went home, and my husband, who always warns me, don't spend any money. I said, well, so much for that warning. I just spent 10,000. Um,
I went the trip to
and
Europe and God knows where.
you know, I went to Maynard, and had a wonderful tour, and got to select head joints. And I think I think what sets Powell apart from other wood flute makers is that you can opt for different cuts. And I was just in pig heaven, just you know, trying out the different cuts. And that was quite the experience, even beyond, you know, picking out the one at the convention. I ended up at one point with two heads, and this current one, I have gone to bed. You know, sometimes we go to bed, I do, saying, oh, thank you for keeping me alive during this time. And I go, thank you for my flute. Lindsay, what's her last name? I mean, what's
Lindsay McCord. Yes.
Yeah.
Lindsay McCord. Cord.
McCord.
McCord made this particular head joint.
Yeah.
The color just goes with me. I love it, love it, love it. And I learned also to appreciate. This is don't drop. All right. So I just wanted to very quickly show you that this Lindsay had asked what's the difference. Well, this is the klezmer flute of its time, which is really just a simple system flute that was popular during the early klezmer involvement. When you see the photos, this is the flute, be it whether it has an ivory head or not. What has me stumped sometimes, I'm not as fluent. I have to practice a lot more because the fingerings are different. So as opposed to very quickly. Very similar, and yet somewhat different. So
Yeah.
on my CDs, I am switching off, and it's only the fingerings that really get me. The intonation too, sometimes. I mean, this,
Yeah.
I've often complained, I'll tell you. I complain, this is, you know how most flutists think that our C sharp is out of tune on the flute. I have a hard time demonstrating that it's out of tune on the flute. It's not. And besides which, I've always played with an embouchure that allows the C sharp to come right into intonation. So I will hear. So this is what I have difficulty with demonstrating. That's demonstrating the worst embouchure. And so that's, as you can tell, that's not all as sharp as you would hear on other flutes. So thank you for that. It's just a gorgeous sound, and I've never been a practicer, someone who picks it up every day for 2 hours. No, but I'll tell you, when I do pick it up, first of all, it teaches me over and over again, hey, I'm here for you. And don't you just love my tone? Oh my God. It's just a thrill every damn time.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. And both of you as Powell artists, members of our family, do such a great job, representing the immense possibilities of those instruments. And Jane, kind of as you were saying, you like to introduce your instrument first because it's so eye-catching.
People were actually coming up to me and asking me, is that a clarinet?
Oh yeah, absolutely, clarinet.
I figured I'd just get it over with at the beginning, and because then they could enjoy it and not sit there wondering about it. So
yeah,
I want to just say one thing. This is my group, the Berkeley Choro Ensemble, which I'm so proud of. I have the great honor, like I say, of living in a place where we have these amazing musicians, and they're composers, they're arrangers, they're so diverse. But at any rate, I play the Powell wood flute on this recording, The View from Here, which is this collection of modern choros by living Brazilian composers, as well as 5 of them are by our members in the band. But if you want to hear what choro sounds like with a Powell flute in an ensemble, I think you can go to our website, Berkeley Choro Ensemble, or just Google me. It'll be on.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll put it in the comments as well.
Powell has our CDs, and I have 4.
Yeah.
And
yes,
they all have, and it's labeled which flute I'm using.
Yeah.
So they all feature the Powell flute numerous times. The last one probably most of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful.
Well, we are playing on Zoom, not the most phenomenal situation in terms of big sound, but I think for myself and Adrianne, we both would think that if you hear the flute within an ensemble, you really get a real sense of why we love it so much. The blend and the colors and all the ranges. It's just so
right.
fun.
Yeah. And oftentimes too, flutists will think, oh, it's a wood flute, it doesn't have the same power, it's not going to play as easily as metal. And I think you've definitely proved them wrong. And that's why it's such a popular instrument, especially with European orchestras. And it's starting to make its way back to our American audience.
I think that the wood flutes are huge in Europe. I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I go over there. I was there a few years ago where I met Francois, by the way, in Paris. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the European flutists are playing wood, not all the time, certainly some of the time. I mean, great players. It's
yeah.
This country, it's taken longer to catch on, but I'm noticing certainly in my world of choro that Hadar Neuberg, another wonderful choro player, is playing a wood Haynes, and others are starting to buy them because it's really you kind of have to see it used in practice, and then you get it, and once you try it out. So.
Yeah, exactly. And if we have flute festivals, if they happen, hopefully, in the next year, certainly visit us at your nearby flute festival and try out wood flutes. We always try to bring them. It's an experience and share the wood love. So, well, I'll kind of give a last call if there's any questions from our audience members. They've been giving their love and congratulations, but no questions so far. So we'll give them one more minute. We've, just so you know, we have a audience member from Poland. So hello, I'm so sorry, Gosha. I hope that's how you say your name.
Great. Great.
And from Akron, Ohio. So thank you so much to everybody who has tuned in today. It's been such a pleasure to chat with the both of you and hear about your, unique careers and your beautiful instruments and hear you play.
I have an offer to have those. If you want to jam, Jane and I have done this. You can either put yourselves on mute, but I have a final piece that if you want to, Jane, chime in, it's all G minor. You won't go wrong.
No problem.
So we could do that and ask the audience if they would like to play. I'm doing G minor with C sharp in there, and we could rock it out.
I think that's a good way to finish this out and go out and with some style. I love it.
I don't think you have to even mute yourselves. I really don't think so.
Adrianne, is this G harmonic minor or G?
All right, so it's G minor with C sharp. So let me just play the scale for you. G minor would have been, but now I'm doing. It's the simplest way. You'll hear that I'm not playing E flats either, but it's simplest to stay in G minor and wail away. You'll be very happy.
Okay.
So Adrianne, do you advise our audience to keep their sound on? Should I change your sound at all? No?
No. Go ahead and do it.
While they're playing, for our audience members, if you have any questions, certainly think them up. Susan, I see your question. I think it'll be perfect, to ask the ladies once they've finished a little mini jam session. So if you think of anything while they're playing, please feel free to ask questions in the comment section of our live stream. But I'll leave it up to you.
Here we go. Sorry.
Huh. Oh, we
On
lost
Bluetooth again. It says, if it just doesn't like being not used.
Technology. I spend more time working about my technology setup than I did about my playing, believe me.
I know the feeling. Yes.
I had a few consultants there along the way that gave me advice, but
yeah. Love it. So hopefully if you are audience members at home, if you had a chance to get your flute out and jam session along with that. That's the first Zoom jam session I've ever gotten the privilege to hear. So thank you.
Well, it's
I guess we'll just wrap up. We just have, let's see, Gosha is saying the scale G minor with C sharp sounds similar as a Lydian scale. Very good observation.
It is.
Right, because of the race.
Yeah. And then, yeah, we'll finish with Susan's question then. Thank you so much for asking, Susan. She says, how sensitive to humidity are wood flutes or extreme temperature changes? So I don't know if you guys want to share your experiences.
For me, myself, honestly, I'll tell you something. This flute is a rock. I mean, I always clean it out a lot, because much more so than my silver flute, because I just don't want to damage it. But I'll tell you something. I mean, 20 years, no cracks. It survived. I try to avoid taking it outside if it's really cold, but for the most part, it's really easy to maintain. The wood is very solid, and I haven't had any.
Totally agree.
Totally agree. Like a Baroque flute.
Totally agree. I am not. I'll admit right here in the confession window. I do not care. I don't do all the things I should. I don't.
Me either.
And it's been the same 20 years. Jane will remember we roomed together, and I'm a mess. And so I'm careful, but I'm not all that careful. One time, I'll admit, it was a newer head joint, and actually it was my first one for the whole flute. I went and played a gig on it. I had already done the time, of making sure I had, am I frozen?
You're flashing green.
You're a fluorescent green, Adrianne. It's exciting.
Oh no. And frozen now that.
Rose.
Oh no.
Maybe it's because, did you only sign up for an hour?
No, I have a business account, so we should be good.
That is
Let's
weird.
see.
I've never seen that. A first.
This is definitely a first. Yes.
Our voices can still be heard, right?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
gonna go to.
So anyway, yeah, we should go to a question answered. But I did have my first head joint crack. But
Oh no.
I knew there was a problem because I was playing a wedding, and the kitchen. It was winter, and the kitchen staff kept opening the door. People were sitting huddled in their seats, huddled with their coats on, and I knew I was in trouble. So I went into the kitchen and I said, please, 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 I'm going to shut the door. We are freezing, and I'm going to have my flute crack. Okay, fine. They shut the door. I came back a minute later. It was open again. And sure enough, the next morning, huge crack. So I tried.
Yeah. Not necessarily within your control. And
No,
fortunately I think, with the aging that we do with the wood instruments, minimum of 7 years, to just really make sure that wood is really well conditioned before it's made into instruments.
Exactly. And I have had, for comparison, on all my antique flutes, yes, it reacts to humidity. Yeah. My Irish flute reacts to humidity. This does not. Good.
We're glad to hear that. And especially, you never know. I mean, we have both coasts going, so I'm glad to hear that.
That's right.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, so I think we'll wrap it up. Yep, no more questions. So thank you so much, Adrianne. I stopped your video just so we, don't cause any strobing issues there.
Well, Jane is frozen too, I think.
No, I'm not.
Well, you haven't moved.
It might be your bandwidth, maybe, but I think that's a sign that we should.
You stayed frozen. No, my bandwidth is good.
Well, we'll take it as a sign that we'll let our audience get on with their day. And thank you so much to the both of you, Adrianne Greenbaum, Jane Lenoir, for your expertise, your beautiful playing, hearing about your careers and your instruments. And thank you for everybody who tuned in, for all of your wonderful comments and a couple questions. And as
Thank
part
you
of
all.
the, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you all, and visit visit Powell, visit our websites too.
Yes, absolutely. You can find out more about these wonderful artists on the Powell website, and you can find more of their recordings there. And then, for our non-flutist friends and flute community too, we have more webcasts coming up every Thursday. Our next Powell one, oh gosh, is in mid-July. I want to say July 23rd. We'll put that in the comments. I think the heat is starting to seep in. So thank you everybody for tuning in today. Thank you, ladies.
Kristyn,
A good one.
really fun. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody. If you're anybody still there, thank you for coming to the show.
Bye.
Yes.
Thank you.